So, this is my post-mortem for my Ludum 50 Game Jam game, The End of Days. The theme was Lady Inevitable. I am planning on just sort of playing through the game casually in the background while I talk about it a bunch. You can play the game very quickly for yourself on my itch. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes to get through tops. Highly recommend doing that if you aren't familiar with it yet or not, because I'm going to be skipping over dialogue and things like that. So let's just get straight to it. The time spent on this, I think I spent a full hour or two just thinking about the theme. I figured with a theme like The Lady Inevitable and people trying to incorporate that into gameplay, there are going to be a lot of games that were sort of, you know, your typical arcade, like survive as long as possible structure, which I don't have a problem with, but I did not feel super compelled by that at the time, so I spent a decent amount of time, I think, just lying face down on my couch trying to think up other ways to use the theme, and that took a long time to sort of work through. So there's a fair bit where I was just like, man, I think most of Friday was spent just thinking. Eventually was able to settle on the basic idea that what you're putting off is something that is improved by the time spent not getting around to it, essentially. And so that's where this basic idea came from, of you are trying to explode, and that explosion is bad for you necessarily, but if the longer you're able to delay it, the more powerful it is eventually. And for a long time, I just had that mechanical idea and the general sense that I wanted to involve humor in the games in some way. And so I thought about humorous ways in which you might, put something off for a long time, but just then their physics came in. It's just like, oh, things moving around is funny in games, explosions are funny. I was thinking about, like, the, what is that? I think it's in, like, the Need for Speed games. You've got the Crash mini-game where you try to blow up as many cars as possible, or, like, the one where you try to bail off your skateboard as hard as possible, and whatever games those are. Both really, like, funny gameplay things. And so I took inspiration from those, went for, like, okay, you'll blow up. I know how to do that in Unity. That's really quick. And it was easy to just sort of move from there to a technical prototype where, mechanically, just exactly like you're seeing right here, I can roll around. When I hit a button, everything in the scene explodes, and I had a basic idea that you would be aiming to blow up as many things as possible. From there, I was just thinking of ways to narratively justify this. I didn't really know why you'd be doing this or what would set it up that way. I had some ideas that if you were sort of trying to piss a guy off, kind of, I thought that would be funny. That if you were going through this whole process because you wanted to get rid of something that someone else had made, that would be a good way of doing that. And then I remember my prototype was just a bunch of 3D prefabs in a scene, or primitives rather, exactly like this is, of just, oh yeah, this is a bunch of squares and triangles. And so I wanted to use a shader, because the shader was a really easy way for me to do some programming to get around a otherwise like really bland looking game, which is why there's a bunch of dithering and the edge shading. And for a while I was gonna go with, like, oh, the narrative is like you're sort of in something that someone made, like, creatively, like you're in like a draft script or something, and you're like a bad idea, and the longer it takes for the author to like find you and get rid of you, the more of the script you ruin, and you're trying to ruin as much of the script as possible. But that felt very ornate, and I don't know, I mean, I'm not... It ended up kind of getting in my hands. I was like, this is going to be too much, but I still kind of ended up working on the dithering that would have suited that a lot better in the meantime, and then was sort of stuck with it. Like, okay, and I think it works fine. I think the effect that it provides works for this not feeling like this is a bunch of Unity objects, or like Unity 3D models. It still is, but I think it at least looks distinct. And then it really highlights one thing that I think is very good about the game that I like, is the humor of just the main character being this little 3D model rolling around. That was an idea I came to early where I was like, that's really funny. I need to do that. And it was fun to go for it. I had originally perceived it, or thought of it in my head, as being more like, I don't know, like a weird idol or a statue or something, where, like, rather, like, where it looked like it would look like it was made out of metal and it had been sort of carved into or something almost, or like etched. Whereas I found my 3D modeling skills were not really up to task for that, so I instead made this, which I still really like, and I really enjoy the movement of just taking the sphere that I had rolling around in Unity and just parenting it to this and saying, all right, now when it rolls around, it's this little imp instead. I think I'm very happy with that, and I like it that it shows up in that one cutscene and pivots around. It's like, this is you're important, you're this little weird guy. Just in terms of enforcing the humor, because I think with game jams, there's a lot of ways to take it. My personal take, though, is I want something that is, like, weird more than competent if I have to choose between the two, basically. that I'd rather do something that's going to sort of make someone look at the game and be like, the interesting choices were made. This is sort of interesting the way this works. It's, sort of catches someone off guard. And when I watched like content streamers and stuff like that play through Game Jam games, those are often the ones that I enjoyed watching the most. Where I'm just sort of like, man, this is doing its own thing. And so I was interested to make something mechanically interesting that I thought was semi-unique, and then just make it sort of odd. And I think I succeeded to that. So I'm happy with that part. I think there's some things that I could have done better. I eventually ended up with this whole demon god thing, which I'm not super like thrilled about, but it's functional. There's more dialogue that I wanted there to be. I was hoping it'd be punchier and you would just sort of get through to the gameplay faster. But unfortunately, it required a lot of justification, I found. And so that first cutscene is like 15 lines of text, which is a pain to write and put in. I'm not a particularly good writer, and then spent a lot of time to get it set up and have the camera move around and everything. So that was a little unfortunate. But other than that, I just wish I hadn't saved a bunch of things that are important for the very last day. I ended up doing all the level design with like 6 hours to spare, and the music too. And actually, you can hear right now this music track is a little funky because my recording equipment was acting strange when I was playing this, and I kind of ran with it of like, sure, okay, it sounds bad. That's intentional now as a result. Which, oh well, should have turned on notifications. So yeah, so I think the level design saving for last was sort of, I have this where I enjoy building engines and systems and stuff in games. Then when it comes to actually making things with those systems, I get cold feet. I'm like, I don't know, like you could make something cool with this. That's as much as I care about. So I think this first level, was done totally through like the debugging process of me adding in new things to make sure they would work with the game and stuff. Setting up all these objects to sort of sit around and making sure you get up ramps. I played on like the physics for a long time trying to get it so you could go up ramps without also making it feel like you went way too fast. And actually I had to implement it so that when you're on a ramp, gravity is like turned way down for you, because I had to turn the gravity up so that the physics wouldn't feel really floaty for the collisions and the explosion at the end, but then it meant you couldn't climb up things. So while you're on this, I'm constantly putting a force on the player to make it easier to go up hills, which is very, very janky. But and then another thing I'd say, you can see it right now, I wish I picked a different font. I stuck with like the default Arial for Unity. I just was sort of running out of time and went with that, which is too bad, but oh well. Definitely some things I could have done better, but I am happy with this. I think it is fun to look at and say like, all right, I had an idea and I really committed to that idea and tried it out, and there's something here, and you can knock this wizard over as much as you want, which I think is one of the best things in the game. I'm gonna make a second video, I think, going over the Unity project and sort of the way that I got all this stuff working, which will be a more technical video, not like hyper focused, but just the practical matters instead of just the design decisions I made. So I'll put that up at some point. But this is just sort of my broad overview of what the game jam was like for me, and some thoughts I had going into it and how things sort of turned out. And yeah, I'm hoping to do more game jams in the future. This was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more if I can. Thanks for listening.